Hey everyone, part 2 of this video series. Now, Joe last time said he was going to do a response to me, he never did. So, either he couldn't or he couldn't be bothered. Either way, so let's go through this, because I'm going to keep on doing it. I suppose it's now my job to go through this series and debunk it, so let's go forth.
Religion and Mental Disorders, Part 2, Children in Danger. I need to emphasize once again, I am not claiming all or most individuals that are religious are mentally ill, like I stated in Part 1 overview. A few people, including the skeptical heretic, thinks otherwise. Link below. I believe religion can be a good thing for most people, which I have stated many times in videos and on live shows in the past. But this series is not targeting this issue.
And what you just said completely contradicts what you said in the first video, in which you said that you think that most devoutly and fundamentally religious people have some sort of mental disorder, which is exactly what you did say. Now you're backtracking after we called you out on it. Because you're wrong. It just isn't the case. And the fact is that what you're doing and saying contradicts research and contradicts and actually stops us from understanding something which should be as understood as physical illness. That isn't just contributing to one thing or one aspect. It's due to a lot of things. It could be hereditary. It can be social pressures. It could be a mixture of all these things. Again, it's not down to us one thing. And saying it is just makes you look like an ignorant arse. So, with that said, right, here's a question for you, Joe, that you never addressed. And here's a question, right. Do you think that what you're doing is getting in the way of us actually understanding and actually appreciating the signs and symptoms that come with mental illness? When you're trying to point to people who don't have it? That's the reason I call you out. It's not because I'm religious too and it insults me. It doesn't insult me. Again, I have a condition that lends itself to having mental ill problems with it. It doesn't bother me. I don't have it. I have to get myself tested, so I know I don't have it. So, again, what you're doing is just making yourself look like an idiot. Sorry.
I do believe religion can be a delusion for the most part, and that some individuals take it to the extreme, i.e., devout and fundamentalist. Psychology is subjective in my opinion, and research and studies are evolving in this field. I will be releasing research I have done, and will be providing cases and ongoing research that I believe will indicate delusions, hallucinations, and also possible serious medical conditions, i.e., psychosis and schizophrenia, can be due to religious beliefs.
Well, you're correct that psychology, like any medical field, has to evolve with the times. It's not evolving in the way you're talking about. It evolves based upon what we consider normative behaviour. And as such, being religious is part of the normative behaviour. Again, they've done neurological studies, they've done psychological studies, and they show there's very little difference between a brain that doesn't believe and a brain that does. They've shown that they're very different in the thought process. No, what they have found is that the brain does produce things like when you're doing something that you enjoy. Let's say, for example, you enjoy listening to certain types of music, or you like doing a certain type of activity, that those sort of brains are activated. It is not as to say things that occur in, let's say, for example, in paranoid schizophrenia or psychosis or anything like that. And when you say delusions, again, no. Because again, when people say you suffer delusion, it's very different from what Richard Dawkins said in, let's say, for example, the God delusion. He's misusing terms. He's using the dictionary term and not the medical term. And they're two different terms. And even if it was the same term, let's say it was, Richard Dawkins isn't a psychologist either. Psychology is a medical strict field, And you said, in a hangout, oh no, it wasn't a hangout, it was a Vol on TV, that psychology isn't a medical field. Well, it is, Joe. And do you know how it is? Because people who are psychologists have to go to medical school and get a doctorate to be able to practice. And I had to go to university. So I'd really love you with a straight face to tell that to people who are psychologists.
An issue is that, I believe, religion gets a special pass, at least here in America, when it comes to possible mental illnesses, and some even get away with murder. I will be bringing up a few legal cases here in Part 2, Children in Danger. Please understand.
It gets an exemption because it's never been proven to be so. And the burden of proof is upon the person who's making it. Again, if you had proof, then you present it, but there isn't any. There's no neurological proof, there's no emotional proof, there's no clinical proof, there's no actual there's no difference between your brain and somebody like my brain, or somebody like, I don't know, Tim's brain, or somebody, I don't know, Venify gets his brain. There's very little difference. The difference is so minute it might as well just not be there. So what are we just going to base it upon what you think is normal? Well, screw you. This is the sort of thinking that got homosexuals put as as I said, you never addressed this point, okay? And the point is this: how is this any different to what people used to do when they at one point put homosexuality as a mental illness? I want you to add to that, because again, what you're doing is exactly parallel. You disagree with something, so therefore you're trying to justify how it's a mental illness because you're disagreeing with it, not because it legitimately is. And the reason it gets a pass is because it isn't. People have done the research, they've done the psychological tests, and they've not found any distinct difference between the thought processes. So what do you want them to do? Lie?
And I take mental health very, very serious, and feel people should seek professional help if needed, or if they are a danger to themselves and or to others. Having a mental illness does not make you a bad person, but it can be dangerous for some people if their condition goes untreated. I believe in getting the correct diagnosis and treatment. I am not a professional, as I stated before, and this is only my subjective opinion.
And again, you're wrong. Mental illness is a spectrum. Because there are high-functioning people as well as low-functioning people. Like, for example, let's take psychosis. There are some people who can control their psychosis because, again, because it's operating on such a low level, and they can sort of like get through it by like breathing exercises, talking to other people, social counselling. And some people who are in the other end of the spectrum who are full on and need to have constant care. So which end of the spectrum are you talking about there, Joe? Are you talking about the very top end? Then yeah, I'd agree. But again, it affects 1 in 4 people, Joe. And that's more than there are fundamentally religious people in the entire world, Joe. The fundamentally religious people are more than there are mentally ill people in the world. And you say it gets a special pass in the United States. No, it gets a special pass everywhere. Even in places like Sweden, Czech Republic, places where it's heavily secular or even atheist majority, it gets a pass. Because even though they disagree with it, they don't tell people they're mad for believing it. Because that is not their place to do so, because they can't prove it medically. So what are you going to do? Force them?
Part 2. Children in Danger. Seth Ian Glazer, 17 months, died March 28, 1984, in Culver City, California, of bacterial meningitis. The parents only used a Christian Science practitioner and obtained no medical care for Seth. The parents said that on March 27th, Seth seemed ill and very tired, so they requested absent treatment from a church practitioner. At various points, Seth seemed to improve, but then relapsed. Conclusion. Seth's mother was charged with manslaughter and child endangerment. However, in a trial conducted without a jury, the court decided a verdict in favor of the defendant. Case 2. Natalie Ripberger, 8 months, died December 9th, 1984 in Santa Rosa, California, of the same condition, bacterial meningitis. The parents, Mark and Susan Ripberger, had retained a Christian Science practitioner for spiritual treatment, but would not get essential medical care for their daughter. The infection began approximately 2 weeks before Natalie's death. Details of the course of Natalie's illness was provided by the Christian Science nurse, who before her conversion to Christian Science was a licensed medical nurse. After Natalie's death, the nurse left Christian Science and returned to studies in medical nursing. Conclusion. After hearing arguments from defense counsel David McEnroth that the charges should be reduced to misdemeanor, and Deputy District Attorney David Dunn suggesting that the Ripbergers should serve jail time as a warning to other parents, the judge decided on probation instead. Case 3, which is, I believe, the most detrimental case in the death of children due to faith healing. Philadelphia, 2013. A Philadelphia couple who believes in faith healing over medicine was ordered to stand trial on murder charges in the second pneumonia death of one of their children in a 4-year span. Herbert and Kathleen Scheibel remained held without bail on third-degree murder charges after their preliminary hearing. Their 2-year-old son, Kent, died in 2009, followed by 8-month-old Brandon in April 2013. Prosecutors contend both boys were sick for nearly 2 weeks. The Scheibels are both third-generation members and former teachers at their small fundamentalist Christian church, the First Century Gospel Church in Northeast Philadelphia. They have 7 surviving children. I quote, "We believe in divine healing, that Jesus shed blood for our healing, and that he died on the cross to break the devil's power," unquote, Herbert Scheibel, 44, said in a plea statement read in court Wednesday. "Medicine," he said, quote, "is against our religious beliefs," unquote. Added his wife in her statement, quote, "It means we pray and ask to be healed the way Jesus did when he was on earth," unquote. A jury had convicted them of involuntary manslaughter in their first case in Kent's death in 2009, and they were only put on 10 years probation that included orders to seek medical care if any other child got sick. Now, before I go on, this is where I have a problem. The fundamentalist mindset you will not change. A judge will not change their mindset, basically telling these parents or ordering these parents to seek medical treatment for their kids. In my opinion, when people have such a strong faith, they will not listen to reason. Let's move on.
Now, I've got to say this. What he's doing is a correlation equals causation argument, which is that 3 parents were neglectful parents, and therefore the common denominator is their faith, and well, instead of it being, I think we should change the laws on neglectful parenting. Now, I speak as somebody who lives in probably a more secular country than you do, but there have been issues here of it happening over here as well, where people have killed their children out of neglect because they can't take care of them, because they have to work about 3 jobs to be able to afford it, because they even want to make money off the life insurance policies of the children. Now, I think that everybody would think it's bad that parents allow their child to die without care or attention or food or anything like that. But it should be a neglectful parent issue. It should not be a religious issue. If you're a neglectful parent, you get sent to prison. End of story. It doesn't matter whether you're doing it for religious reasons, whether you're doing it for greed reasons, it shouldn't matter what reasons you're doing it for. And if you want to say that, I'm fully in agreement with you, but it does not make it a mental health issue. It's a neglectful parent issue. And you're trying to shift the issue to what it actually is. Now, you said that you can't change your fundamentalist mindset. Well, that may be the case, but again, what you're talking about is extremism, not fundamentalism. Fundamentalism just means you hold to your faith strongly. I'm a fundamentalist, in that I hold to the fundamental teachings of Jesus Christ, but I'm not an extremist. There's a difference there. Please learn it, because what you're taking is the way that Americans use it, because they're basically on the works. You cut the fundamentals I just detest people using that particular word. Anyway, let's continue.
After Brandon's death in April 2013, an irate judge found they had violated parole and sent them to prison. The Scheibels returned to court July 3, 2013, which is next week, to be formally arraigned on murder, involuntary manslaughter, child endangerment, and conspiracy charges. This is a case I will follow closely. I feel the judge in the first case in 2009 should be also charged, as he failed to take the Scheibels' remaining children away and for not giving them jail time. This is not only a judicial system failure, but a special pass due to a religious ideology. I have included a link to over 40 cases in which faith healing was prescribed over proven medical treatments. The results legally and morally are not acceptable in my view. The organization, Children's Healthcare, is a legal duty, has estimated that around 300 children have died in the U.S. since 1975 due to people putting too much faith in faith healing. The Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act, which included a landmark exemption for parents who do not seek medical care for religious purposes, while all states give social service authorities the right to intervene in cases of child neglect. Today, 31 states have child abuse religious exemptions when a child is being abused or neglected. The justifications for it shouldn't matter. Abuse is abuse, neglect is neglect, especially when it comes to life and death. The state must put the welfare of the child over and above the religious beliefs of the parents. Of course, I will hear a lot of negativity about the...
Right, and I'll say for the record here, as a Christian, that any parent who does neglect their child or not take their child to a doctor should seriously reconsider being a parent, or reconsider their parenting style, because there's nothing in the Bible, there's nothing about their beliefs that now the Christian Science beliefs are quite different because they don't believe in modern medicine, but I do think that there is exemption in their beliefs for children. So yeah, those particular parents were actually going against their beliefs. But again, we don't want to hear about that now, do we? Because you want to pay something else again. But again, this is not a mental health issue. This is a neglectful parent issue.
This upcoming video, but here's a video clip of Kathleen Taylor. Says religious fundamentalism can be treated as a mental illness.
Hello, my name is Kathleen Taylor, and I've written a book called Brainwashing, The Science of Thought Control. Brainwashing is a really interesting topic, and one of the reasons it's interesting, apart from the inherent excitement of Manchurian Candidate and all of that lot, is that it touches on two very interesting other topics. One of those is human brains, and the other is the question of human beliefs and how those change. We all change our beliefs, of course. We all persuade each other to do things. We all watch advertising. We all get educated and experience religious inputs and all that sort of thing. So there's a lot of it going on. Brainwashing, if you like, is the extreme end of that. It's the coercive, forceful, psychological torture type. So, of course, when you think of brainwashing, you think of prisoner of war camps, you think of cults, maybe Al-Qaeda, that sort of thing. And that's very exciting, it's exotic, it's mysterious, it's unusual. But, as I say, it's only the extreme of a much more widespread phenomenon, which is persuasion. How we make people think things that may not be good for them, that they may not otherwise have chosen to think. And the question with that is, how does that work in the human brain? You can't leave the brain out of brainwashing. Okay? I mean, a lot of people try to. There's a lot of books about brainwashing that don't even hardly mention the human brain. But I reckon that actually looking at the way the brain works, because it's the channel of all our good and evil, because it's the mechanism and the means, that lump of blood-infused blancmange in our heads, we've got to look at it, we've got to take it into account. So I decided that I would try and do that, looking at brainwashing through the lens of neuroscience and psychology, and that, I guess, is what the book's about.
She was talking about brainwashing. How did you get fundamentalist mindset from brainwashing? She was talking about people who... She talks about Al-Qaeda, but again, Al-Qaeda... Here's where she doesn't understand what Al-Qaeda is about. Al-Qaeda was around when there was a lot of negative emotions towards America, the fact that a lot of people were oil rich, and there was a lot of oil being siphoned off, that's it, without with money being given to them. A lot of people who were politically and emotionally scared were twisted into doing things that they wouldn't have normally done. Now, if you actually understand that that's where it comes from. Now, Bin Laden himself was rich himself. He was, part of the Osama bin Laden family, and as such was oil rich beyond belief. But he managed to use that money and influence to coerce these people into saying, well, if you do this, I'll pay you. If you do this, it's a divine, and it's doing to the prophet, and you'll be able to show those Americans who are in your land that. So again, it's a very simplistic view of something that is very complex. It's trying to boil down something that was an atrocious act to something that is. To something that's it's just religion. Again, it isn't. It wasn't. It was something that is completely complex. And secondly, she doesn't say that fundamentalism is a mental disorder. What she says is that brainwashing is something that happens in the brain, which is true. It does. But again, you're saying that fundamentalists are brainwashed? No. They just hold their opinion very strongly. We all hold an opinion very strongly sometimes. But we have to work hard to make sure we don't.
Kathleen Taylor, quote, "One of the surprises may be to see people with certain beliefs as people who can be treated," unquote. According to the Times of London, quote, "Somebody who has, for example, become radicalized to a cult ideology, we might stop seeing that as a personal choice as a result of pure free will and may start treating it as some kind of mental disturbance," unquote. Quote, "I am not talking about the obvious candidates like radical Islam or some of the more extreme cults," unquote, she explained. Quote, "I am talking about the things like the belief that it is okay to beat your child. These beliefs are very harmful, but are not normally characterized as mental illness," unquote. Quote, "In many ways, this could be a very positive thing because there are no doubt beliefs in our society that do a heck of a lot of damage, that really do a lot of harm," unquote. Mental health.
Well, if you look at, for example, how it actually works, what she's talking about is reversing the sort of damage that can be done from hardline hardline brainwashing. She's not discussing fundamentalism as a whole. She's talked about, let's say, for example, like the Manson family or the Jim Jones stuff. Even the Jim Jones stuff, I'd say, was a bit harsh because they used guns to coerce people. But if you look at, for example, things like, for example, David Koresh and people like that, the reason they got as powerful as they did is because they targeted people who were lonely and wanted some sort of, and they took advantage of that. Now, that's what she's talking about. She is not talking about fundamentalists for a couple of reasons. They are not mentally disturbed. Yeah, they just hold their opinion very strongly. And I'd like to ask Joe, do you not hold an opinion very, very strongly? Don't you consider yourself an anti-theist and therefore hold that very, very strongly? Would you like me to call you someone who's mentally disturbed now? Because that's what you're arguing. That isn't what she's arguing.
Research. Schizophrenia and religious delusions. The relationship between religion and schizophrenia is of particular interest to psychologists because of the similarities between religious experiences and psychotic episodes. Religious experiences often involve auditory and or visual hallucinations, and those with schizophrenia commonly report similar hallucinations, along with a variety of delusions and faulty beliefs. A common report from those with schizophrenia is some type of a religious delusion. That is, they believe they are divine beings, God is talking to them, they are possessed by demons. Link 1, 2, and 3 down below in the description box. In a study, patients with schizophrenia that have been previously admitted to a hospital, 24% had religious delusions. Link 4 below down in the description box. This had led some researchers to question whether schizophrenia leads to an individual to become more religious, or if intense religiosity leads to schizophrenia. This study and issue is still evolving, as it's too early to conclude.
What you're discussing are momentary lapses, because people have them, in a way, can have moments of experiential intrigue. But again, it would be a bias on the person who's doing it. Again, mental illness affects 1 in 4 of us. There are more religious people who've experienced it than there are mentally ill people in the world. So the math doesn't really work out. What you're actually discussing is that the schizophrenic can have it as a way of calming themselves down from their paranoid delusions, and what people actually are discussing is that a positive. Should we stop them from doing that because maybe that's making them worse? What they're not seeing is that religious people are mentally ill because they have these sort of things. That's not the way it works.
Social Psychiatry and Psychiatric Epidemiology. November 2010, Volume 45, Issue 11, pages 1095 to 1103. Religion as a trigger for schizophrenia. Schizophrenia can be triggered by a variety of environmental factors, including significant stress, intensely emotional situations, and disturbing or uncomfortable experiences. It is possible that religion itself may be a trigger for schizophrenia. Religious imagery is often very grandiose and defies commonly held beliefs of what is realistic and natural in the world. Experiencing an intense religious experience may trigger a psychotic episode in those who are vulnerable to them, because religion often requires a believer to suspend their usual idea of what is possible and impossible. This could potentially lead to a psychotic episode due to the shift in realistic thinking. A sufferer may believe that they themselves are religious deities or messiahs, or that God himself is speaking to the individual. It has been shown that those with schizophrenia who suffer from religious delusions are more religious than those who do not suffer from these delusions. Link 5 below in the description box. It has also been shown that those who suffer from religious delusions are less likely to continue long-term treatment.
I don't know where to start. This is from a paper from 2010. And the reason it is from a paper from 2010 is because it got debunked in 2010. And here's the reason why. Schizophrenic people are done for numerous factors, not just one. It tends to be a load, and religious ones aren't actually part of that, and there's one reason why. Because you're part of a community, and as you're part of a community, if you're part of, like, let's say you're part of, like, one of these Church of God, mega churches, or, one of these, like, proper off the deep end stuff, then, again, even that, because there's illogenic experiences, and there's nothing wrong with that, because again it's because positive parts to your brain are being produced. It's not a negative, and there's the reason why that piece of paper got debunked because of that. Because the person who wrote it didn't understand that. Now, this is the Calpern-Pissell argument, which has been debunked as well, because what he does is he does the same sort of thing as saying, well, possible maybe, because it comes from Robert Sapolsky, who frankly is a quack, and as a quack, he doesn't have really any legitimacy to him, and he keeps on putting out these papers that keep on getting rejected, and he'll keep on doing them that get rejected until he gets one that gets put through. Now, how schizophrenia actually works is that they're discussing at the moment, as I said, is it a positive? Because again, there are people that legitimately argue it's a negative because, again, of the things you say. But again, you keep on saying it's an evolving field. Like any medical field, yes, it has to evolve over times. But no, will it ever say what you think it is saying?
Psychosis refers to an abnormal condition of the mind and is a generic psychiatric term for a mental state often described as involving a, quote, loss of contact with reality, unquote. People suffering from psychosis are described as psychotic. Psychosis is a term given to more severe forms of psychiatric disorder, during which hallucinations, delusions, violence, and impaired insight may occur. People with psychosis may have one or more of the following: hallucinations, delusions, catatonia, and or thought disorder. Impairments in social cognitive also occur. Delusions. Psychosis may involve delusional beliefs, some of which are paranoid in nature. Put simply, delusions are false beliefs which a person holds onto without adequate evidence.
Beliefs are by definition false, otherwise they're facts. Keep up.
It may be difficult to change the belief even with evidence to the contrary. Common themes of delusion: person believes that others are out to harm them, grandiose. Person believing that he or she has special powers or skills. Depressed persons may have delusions consistent with their low mood. Delusions that they have sinned or have contracted serious illness. Carl Jaspers has classified psychotic delusions into primary and secondary types. Primary delusions are defined as arising suddenly and not being comprehensible in terms of normal mental processes, whereas secondary delusions may be understood as being influenced by the person's background or current situation, authenticity, religious beliefs, or superstitious belief.
Carl Jaspers actually said that he omits religious beliefs because, again, people can experience things as part of normative human behaviour, but again, you don't want to link to that now, do you? No, you see, because I've actually read Carl Jaspers and you haven't.
Cognitive dissonance. The theory of cognitive dissonance in social psychology proposes that people have a motivational drive to reduce dissonance by altering existing cognitives, adding new ones to create a consistent belief system, or alternatively, by reducing the importance of any one of the dissonant elements. It is the distressing mental state that people feel when they, quote, find themselves doing things that don't fit with what they know, or having opinions that do not fit with other opinions they hold, unquote. A key assumption is that people want their expectations to meet reality, creating a sense of equilibrium. Likewise, another assumption is that a person will avoid situations or information sources that give rise to feelings or uneasiness or dissonance.
Here's why people in the atheist community shouldn't use the words cognitive dissonance, because they don't understand what it is. What it actually is when you're faced with a reality that does, when your brain is conducting something that doesn't really and you face a thought. Do you either go with what is actually true mentally, or do you follow your current mental state and follow where it goes? This is basically how people avoid treatments at times. This is not how people tend to believe. This is why people who use this in the free-thinker atheist community are wrong and will never understand what it actually is, like you just did. So bravo there, Livelife, bravo! You just insulted people with actual medical illnesses, fucking-vo.
In conclusion to this part is a very short one. I feel cognitive dissonance is not the factor when it comes to the death of a child. It's the delusions of the religious. When you suspend reality over delusions to this extreme, this is where an undiagnosed mental illness can be dangerous. Part 3 in the series coming soon, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching, and remember, live life because you only have one.
And I suppose I'll be responding to that as well. Joe, your opinion doesn't matter. What you think delusions are or aren't, and what you think a true real estate is or isn't. The reason these kids died is because of irresponsible parenting. If you did the series called Irresponsible Parenting, guess what? I'd give it a like. I wouldn't be doing this video response. It's because you're talking about mental illness, and that is different from irresponsible parenting. Right? Having 3 cases of cases do not prove your case. It doesn't. Unless these people had mental treatment and then avoided them because they're mental, then you would be invalid, but you're not. Okay? the reason they deny it because it's the part of their religious beliefs that medicine. But again, there's exemptions, so they're not following their religious beliefs. Be part of this exercise more and so, and it's not part of Christian belief anyway. So, for your case to be valid, you'd have to prove that Christianity says that you shouldn't seek medical help. You should ask Jesus for help. But that isn't the case now, is it? I mean, seriously. Anyway, this has been Phoneybeetlemaniacxs, 4 dreams making true out.